Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Cornerstone's Torah service for today. If we could have everyone who is capable of stand, the rest you can sit, and that's okay. We'll do the blessing of the Torah. Baruch et Yahweh HaMivarach. Baruch et Yahweh HaMivarach le'olam v'hen. Baruch Yahweh HaMivarach le'olam v'hen. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Yahweh. Baruch Shemo Noten HaTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from among all peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh. Bless his name, giver of the Torah. Amen. Oops, we had it, and I apologize. There we go. Today's parsha is number 23 on the yearly schedule, Pekudei, Shemot, or Exodus 38:21 through 40, verse 38. And we'll be reading the Shemot, chapter 39, 1 through 32. And do we have a volunteer? Now, sometimes these are a little bit longer, so if you only want to read half of it, let me know, and then we'll have a second person read the second half. Miranda? You look queued up, ready to go there.
Of the blue, purple, and scarlet thread, they made garments of ministry for ministering in the holy place, and made the holy garments for Aaron, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of fine woven linen. And they beat the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads to work it in with the blue, purple, and scarlet thread and the fine linen into artistic designs. They made shoulder straps for it to couple it together. It was coupled together at its two edges. And the intricately woven band of his ephod that was on it was of the same workmanship, woven of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of fine woven linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And they set onyx stones enclosed in settings of gold. They were engraved as signets are engraved, with the names of the sons of Israel. He put them on the shoulders of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he made the breastplate artistically woven like the workmanship of the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and of fine woven linen. They made the breastplate square by doubling it. A span was its length, and a span its width when doubled. And they set it in its 4 rows of stones. A row with a sardius, a topaz, and an emerald was the first row. The second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. The fourth row, a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold in their mountings. There were 12 stones according to the names of the sons of Israel, according to their names, engraved like a signet, each one with its own name according to the 12 tribes. And they made chains for the breastplate at the ends, like braided cords of pure gold. They also made 2 settings of gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 braided chains of gold in the 2 rings on the ends of the breastplate. The 2 ends of the 2 braided chains they fastened in the 2 settings, and put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod in the front. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the ephod. They made 2 other gold rings and put them on the 2 shoulder straps underneath the ephod toward its front, right at the seam above the intricately woven band of the ephod. And they bound the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord, so that it would be above the intricately woven band of the ephod, and that the breastplate would not come loose from the ephod, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made the robe of the ephod of woven work, olive blue, and there was an opening in the middle of the robe, like the opening in a coat of mail, with a woven binding all around the opening so that it would not tear. They made on the hem of the robe pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet, and of fine woven linen. And they made bells of pure gold, and put the bells between the pomegranates on the hem of the robe, all around between the pomegranates. A bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe to minister in, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made tunics artistically woven of fine linen for Aaron and his sons, a turban of fine linen, exquisite hats of fine linen, short trousers of fine woven linen, and a sash of fine woven linen in blue, purple, and scarlet thread, made by a weaver, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then they made the plate of the holy crown of pure gold, and wrote on it an inscription like the engraving of a signet, Holiness to the Lord. And they tied it to a blue cord. They tied to it a blue cord to fasten it above on the turban, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
Got one more
32?
verse.
One more? Okay. Thus all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting was finished, and the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord had commanded Moses, so they did.
Fantastic. Great reading, Miranda. I know, everybody have a seat. Sometimes you get a little nervous when you're doing public reading. I get that way too, actually. So thank you. I really appreciate that clarity. Pretty amazing slides, aren't they, as you're reading through those? The material is fantastic. Now, on this parasha's subject headings, there's only 4 this time. It's a little bit shorter. You've got in chapter 38, the finishing of it, because we read partway through last week, was the materials for the tabernacle. And then a main section of the next one that Miranda read was the making the priestly garments. And then in chapter 40, we have the tabernacle erected, where they actually put everything up. And then chapter 40 ends with a fantastic scene where the glory of the Lord actually comes down and fills it, just like it did with Solomon's temple when they dedicated that. Pretty amazing stuff. Question time, or comment time. Does everybody come prepared? Of course you did. And I think positive. So who had some questions on some of these readings? And then also any comments or things that they had studied out as well too? Oh, I see a hand there.
I've been thinking about the colors, and I think they're beautiful. I'm so glad it wasn't green and brown or something like that. But to me, blue could mean sky or heaven, and red, earth, because Adamah means red.
That's right.
And you combine red and red and blue, and you get purple, which could mean royalty, and then above it all is gold, which is divine and pure. So to me, it's like heaven and earth meeting in the tabernacle.
That is an amazing concept that I've heard a lot of times when I talk to Jewish people who are studied in the scriptures, but not so much in other cultures. Heaven and earth meeting together. That's what Yahweh wants from the very beginning of the Garden of Eden is to dwell with us. They come together, and yes, that's what this does. The tabernacle is a place then where that happened, just like it did in the Garden of Eden. I mean, it slightly looks different, obviously, but it's the same purpose. Solomon's temple, our relationship with Yeshua coming down and living here, and then our future time in the millennial reign and in the New Jerusalem. It's always bringing those two together so we can commune together and have a relationship. Yeah.
Actually, you mentioned it. So Revelation was one of them where the New Jerusalem comes out of the heaven and is on the earth for his dwelling among us. So, and an interesting point there to make, and she kind of touches on it, is that if you'll look at the verbiage in Revelation, I believe it's 20 or 21. It actually names the New Jerusalem the bride, which would be us, and it would be the living stones that would be made for that.
Very, very good point. Yes, thank you. Fantastic. Who else has got something to share? And there was a few discussion around our house this week on a couple of things here, and I heard people talking a couple of times on the hallways about different things too. It's okay if you don't want to do it in a group setting, it's okay. Yeah, David.
I had a question.
Yeah.
It was brought to my attention that when you build columns or pillars unto the Lord, use river rock, unhewn stones. But in these garments, they made them, they cut them, they formed them, the stones for the breastplate. What's the differentiation there?
Good, very good question. Yes, Pastor Rick.
Okay, I think that the stones that were uncut were for altars. And so the altars had uncut stones on them, and you weren't supposed to use any kind of cutting tool. The pillars were a different thing, but the altars were the ones that we had to
Good
be
point.
careful on how you build.
That's exactly what I was going to say too, as far as research goes. Yeah, it's the altars. Yes, sir.
And the altars were made that way because man isn't worthy to shape God. The stones that they're wearing, Yahweh shapes us, and he does cut and form us. And those stones represent us. So that's the difference as far as I understand.
Good point. Now, it's been a while since I researched it. I'm trying to remember if it's exact, but it may have been this. So, in other words, don't quote me, but do your fact checking on it. If I recall correctly, I don't remember if it's in Scripture or outside of Scripture, that when they cut the stones for Solomon's temple, they cut them away from the site and brought them in so that actually when they built the temple, it was very quiet really for a construction zone, very quiet. You didn't hear any of the big hammering and the chiseling and all that stuff, but it was done away and then quietly brought in, which would be pretty amazing. We've got some contractors here. And just think if you built something like that and it was fairly quiet. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Those construction places are noisy. Anybody else? Yeah, Tim?
I know one of the things that really stood out to me was the preparation for the king. You know, the Lord's worthy of everything we can give him, and all the preparation that it took to get to this point, for the Lord to dwell with his children, like you're saying. He wants to dwell with his children, and so there's the moral stuff, there's the other stuff. You know, this is after the golden calf, and then there's also the physical. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to come together, and it has to be the Lord's doing. It can't be man's doing. And it's just preparing of the hearts to receive the Lord, because that's a big thing. But yet he still wants to dwell with us. That's been one of the main things I've seen in this.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. And we have our part, and God has his part. Where we get in trouble is two areas. In general, these are broad statements. Is one, we don't do our part, or we try to do his part. Try to wear his shoes. Our great adversary Hasatan tried that. He was right there next to the throne, finally decided, you know what, I can do this. And it was the pride that he had in that was his fall, which is a good warning to us not to do that. Which is recorded in Isaiah, right, Rick? Is that in Isaiah where it talks about the great? No, it's okay. Yeah, the great I ams, you know, I am this, I am this. It was in Isaiah, or Ishayahu in the Hebrew. Yeah. Anybody else? I've got a couple of, yes.
Just one more thing to add about columns. Columns are normally used to support the weight of the building. And so those that are the columns in there were there to support the weight of the building itself. And so it makes it extra special. Those that are worthy to be columns, he's called to help support the weight. So interesting analogy.
That is a very good analogy. I would agree with that. Now, I didn't show the next slide because there's a surprise on there for you. It's really fun. And I didn't want it to stop everybody from commenting or asking questions. So, is there anybody else? No? Okay, we'll go into the next one then. And the first question, which is technically not on your worksheet because it wouldn't have made sense without the pictures, what are in these two images? Those two things. A couple of you know what they are. That's directly tied in with the high priest. The next question. Yes, Jill?
I'm not sure about the gold one, but the purple one is the, excuse me, that's wool, and or it's probably flax actually, but that's dyed purple, which is what they had to use the special, I don't know, snail, whatever it was that was so expensive for the purple dye. And from what I understand, or from what I've heard, for the seeds, the blue of the seeds as well. And so that's what they made the fabric of.
All right. You guys think she's right or wrong? Not sure. Well, I could tell you this. Pardon? Yes, he does. Yes, he does. That's a very good point. I agree with that as well. And when we're making stuff for him or his high priest, we need to make that to perfection. If we're building a ministry or if we're discipling people, we need to try to make that up to perfection. I completely agree with you. One of the things I learned in archaeology is that biological material does not last very long over time. It usually just disintegrates, especially if it's in soil. A lot of times there's acid in the soil. Some soils don't have acid, like peat bogs. You'll see those over in Europe a lot more. So when they find things there, and actually there's some peat bogs in Florida I just found out this week, and they're finding biological material perfectly preserved, some of it up to 8,000 years old, which is huge because it just deteriorates so fast. And that one there is biological material that was found. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is a copy of the article, 3,000-year-old fragments of cloth dyed with royal purple found in Israel. I've got a copy of the article here. And it says, this is in January 2021, so a little over a year ago. In a groundbreaking discovery, Israeli archaeologists have recovered scraps of fabric dyed in royal purple, also known as true purple, dating back to the era of the biblical King David. That's a good 3,000 years. The remains of woven fabric, a tassel, and fibers of wool were uncovered in a heap of industrial waste at Slaves Hill, an ancient copper smelting site in the Timnah Valley, which is down south. Direct radiocarbon dating confirms that the finds date from approximately 1000 BCE, corresponding to the biblical monarchies of David and Solomon in Jerusalem, which is just fantastic. That's the terrain where the copper mine is. And they weren't expecting to find that at all. They really got excited, flipped out, but it was way so cool. So when you see the color photograph, that's some of what would have been woven into the high priest garment that we're reading about today. Now, the next item is that one down there. Anybody know what that is?
That's actually a pomegranate.
Yep.
And it hung on the bottom of the high priest's robe that he carried in. In fact, it's what they listened to see whether he was dead or not. And if they didn't hear those, they would pull him out with the rope. So
Yep.
those were important things for him.
Are you familiar with that story? It's really a fascinating. I heard that, I went, you've got to be kidding. But God has got a perfection, but he's also practical, very practical. So you figure once a year, the high priest at Yom Kippur goes into the Holy of Holies. That's that special place where the ark is, right? And the Lord's presence was there between the two cherubim on top of the ark. Well, for him to get in there was a process that started with him weeks before, to get purified enough so that he could go in there, right? But just in case he forgot something, forgot a sin, or forgot this or that, or he did something wrong and he was impure, the potential was when he went in there, he could die. So let's say you're a priest in the holy place, which is more the triangle area. You've got the showbread and the menorah and stuff. You see the high priest go in. Well, what happens? He's only supposed to take 20 minutes. It's been an hour. You can't go in there. So the bells, as he walked around, they would tinkle. You could hear, they'd be listening on the other side of the curtain. And they had a rope tied around his ankle. And so if the tinkling stopped, especially if they heard a thump afterwards, he keeled over and died, they could pull him out and not have to go in.
That's actually interesting story is Zechariah, who was John the Baptist's father, they were listening for that, and when he had the vision in there, they had not heard him tinkle for a while, and so they were getting concerned about whether to pull him out or not.
It's funny stuff. Now, again, that's where they come in. Look at that place. Just amazing. I've been really close to where some of the Solomon's copper mines were in southern Jordan, just across the border, because that border wasn't there then. And there are rich copper deposits in those areas. Yes, Joe.
So if that gold little thingamablobber was a pomegranate, then the slide that you showed us while Miranda was reading had like woven pomegranates on it with the bells. So what's the difference?
What's the diff? Very good point. Let me go forward. And this is what they found here. Discovered golden bell from the high priest robe in Jerusalem, Jerusalem's holy temple. And what they did was they found this in a ditch. The Second Temple era artifact, which was around the 1st century AD to like about 50 years before AD. That's the Second Temple, Herod's temple. That's what they're talking about, right? That when the Romans or the Jews revolted against the Romans, they burned the temple down. That was the Second Temple. The first one's Solomon's, and the Babylonians tore that one down. So, Second Temple era artifact was discovered in a drainage canal just west of the western wall of the Temple Mount in the City of David National Park. According to excavation managers, and it names them, let's see, it appears the bell was sewn on the garment of a man of high standing in Jerusalem at the end of the Second Temple period. It is known from the biblical book of Exodus the high priest wore bells like this. While it is not certain that this bell belonged to a high priest, it cannot be ruled out. So they think it was, but they're not sure, because it's kind of hard to tell. And evidently, there's something inside of it that when they rattle, it tinkles like a bell. And they measured the megahertz of it, too. It's 280 megahertz for anybody who's a technology geek. They did measure it, and that's what what was going on there. So it was at least from a very wealthy person. Now, we're going to go back to Jill's excellent question. And you can see some of the bells up there. And there, right there. What they have to do, a lot of these images come from what's called the Temple Institute. And they go through scripture ad nauseum. They have a ton of people researching it, and they have a lot of people examining extra biblical accounts that cover in great detail also many things. From there, they put their heads together and work out trying how to do things. So to them, it seemed like that was the best thing to do there. Okay? Now, sometimes when you find things in the archaeological record, you have to shift a little bit. I suspect they're going to use these as the bells, actually. The pomegranate would actually be the bell itself, so it would be a different shape. But sometimes that happens, and especially when you find things in archaeology, which to me is why it's very valuable, because you can read an account. I remember studying this way back in the day when I was studying in college. You could read any historical account, but when you found stuff physically, sometimes it would look different, sometimes it would look what you thought it would, and sometimes you have to change a few things. So that's why the archaeology is, to me, one, it's very important because you got the physical hard evidence that verifies for people who are tearing down scripture and saying it's not true, it never happened, it's a bunch of fairy tales, because we're doing the history, we're doing the archaeology, and there's no evidence. Well, if you don't know how to counter that, you could believe that. Okay, all I can say is a classic story is the story. Remember Jonah? And he went to Nineveh, right? The book of Jonah. People would say that's not a true book. That's just a fairy tale. It's a moral story, which is fine, because Nineveh never existed. In fact, the Syrian Empire never existed, so northern Israel wasn't destroyed. It's all fairy tale until a British explorer, I think it was the late 1800s, mid 1800s. Walking on looking for stuff in the upper Mesopotamian valley and found a place, and they started digging, and it was Nineveh. Then they found the whole Syrian Empire, which had 3 phases. They put a book out, which actually renewed the faith of a lot of people. It was part of a revival in England. I believe it was in the late 1800s. They went, oh my goodness, the Bible's true, for those people who are doing that. Yeah.
The same argument is actually being waged over the flood. Okay, and there's big arguments about that. In fact, I ran into one of the guys that has been on this research for a long time that is against the flood, says that it didn't happen. Nice guy.
Yeah.
Just really, kind of messed up, but he's as far as theology. But anyway, he is a great guy. But
just
but
inaccurate.
really, he'll tell you that the flood didn't exist, and what he'll do is show you to prove it. You prove it to me, and then I'll believe it. So
Yeah,
that's what-
which you can. When I studied a lot on science and anthropology and some other areas like that, there actually is it's called like something column. I forget what it's called. But it's like a soil column. If you cut away the earth and you looked at it from the side, you see these different layers of type of things. Okay, and they'll say this happened this way, this happened that way, and stuff like that. And what's funny is in there is a layer that's really thick, and there's all these dead animals. I mean, like millions. And a lot of them are no longer here anymore, but they have the fossils in that layer. I forget the name of the layer because I wasn't expecting to do this today. But it's all over the world, too. Gee, what a thought. Gee, global flood, all that destruction. So, yeah, people like who's Rick talking to, and I was able to talk with quite a few people who are doing it as well, too. That's their pursuit. They live in these areas. There's fantastic organizations digging in Israel, quite a few places, and in Jordan, that are digging up the proofs that show Scripture is accurate. I got to be in one. I didn't get to work there as an archaeologist, but we got to go in one of the dig holes in Jordan. And it was a mud brick wall, and it was at the very top of what's called a tell, where a civilization's there and then they get destroyed. Well, instead of scraping all that stuff away, they just kind of smooth it out and build another one. And then that one gets destroyed. And then you build up, and Megiddo has got a very famous dig. They've got like 16 civilizations there, all built on top of each other. So it looks like this big mountain, right? And in the mud brick wall was brimstone. It was dark brown. It was embedded right in, because it was mud brick. It wasn't a rock. So it went right in, and it was right at the top level of the mound. It's in Jordan, which means they never rebuilt. That's one of the cities that they're suspecting is either Sodom or Gomorrah because of the 5 that were destroyed. Those 2 are mentioned, and this tell's huge. I've seen the other tells that they have not excavated. This one's way bigger. So there's some surmising it's there. But it's hard to find a sign, street signs, Gomorrah Street this way and Sodom Street, It's kind of hard to find. Yeah, Rich.
They actually did. There was a place, I forget where it was, on the mountain where the ark supposedly rested, and they Ararat, and they actually think they found part of the ark that's there, but the country that it's in closed it down, so nobody can go in and verify.
Yeah, it's always been a hot, volatile area. The area he's talking about is like eastern Turkey, northwest Iraq, which is full of Kurds also, and the Kurds don't have their own country, so they're warring against all these other places. It's a real dangerous area many, many times. So that's what that is. And I'm going to go forward. And there's that there. Now, the next question I had on the little study guide is, why are we studying the high priest that much? And we're kind of studying this a lot. I mean, the reading was all about the garments and everything. Why would we do that? What's important?
The foreshadow or foretelling of Christ as our high priest.
Have anybody, who here has heard that phrase that Jesus, Yeshua in Hebrew, is our high priest? Okay, good. So I'm saying about a half a hand's here. Okay. Yeah, and then I'll get into these scriptures here. I may flag some of yours too. Is that okay? Yours first? Go ahead.
I don't care.
Oh,
Either way.
okay. So in Hebrews 4:14, seeing that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Yeshua, or Jesus, the Son of Elohim, or God, let us hold fast our profession. And another one is in Hebrews 6:20, whither the forerunner is for us entered, even Yeshua, made an high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Okay, there's a few more too. I'm going to pop another slide up. So he's our high priest, and we're studying Aaron and all these garments and everything all put together. That's a model of what's in heaven, right? Just like the building is. Well, it seems like the high priest is too. That's pretty cool. I don't know about you, but I get excited. I get very, very excited. But is he a high priest out of the order of the Levites? And of the Levites, Aaron was picked to be the high priest. Answer is no. Melchizedek is the one. And this is a close-up of the crown that the Temple Institute has built. It's on the mannequin there on the right. And they have made that. If you want to study more about Yeshua's role as the high priest and Melchizedek, I've got these scriptures up here for you. Okay? You've got Hebrews chapters 4 through 7. That's explaining who he is and what type of order he is and what his responsibilities are in many ways. A background information, because it mentions Melchizedek. The question would then be, who's Melchizedek? As we say in English. He's originally mentioned in Genesis 14, 17 through 20. Then you have more information in Psalm 110, 1 through 7. So if you want to write these down for further study, it doesn't take long to read, but it's fascinating. It opens up a whole different perspective on who Yeshua is and what he's doing. I mean, the guy just like multitasks like I've never seen. That's just, to put it in simple human terms. I mean, he's got so many roles and just so many things. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. It really, really is. And remember when the high priest went into the Holy of Holies, part of what he did was prayer stuff. What's Yeshua doing in heaven right now in front of the Father's throne? He's praying for us. Right. But he's met the protocol, one, because he sacrificed himself and he rose from the dead, so he beat death. He's also a high priest. So he can go into the Holy of Holies and be right in front of God and beseech, pray for. When the high priest went in to pray, he prayed for the nation of Israel, that God would forgive them of their sins. That's, in general, the short answer. Yeshua's doing the same thing with us, which is fantastic. I got two hands up. Rick was first, then Tim.
Okay, another one, Greek passage is Hebrews chapter 8, starting in verse 1. It says, now the main point of what is being said is this. We have this kind of high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister, the sanctuary, and the true tabernacle that was set up by the master and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. Therefore, it was necessary for this priest also to have something to offer. Now, if he were on earth, he wouldn't be a priest, since there are those offering gifts prescribed by law. These serve as a copy of, as a copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was warned he was about to complete the tabernacle. For Elohim said, be careful that you make everything according to the pattern that was shown to you on the mountain. But Yeshua has now obtained a superior ministry, and to that degree, he is the mediator of a better covenant, which has been legally enacted on better promises.
Thank you. That one does go farther into that. Very well. Thank you. I appreciate that. So if you want to do the extra credit on that one too, add another chapter to Hebrews. I mean, it's just amazing. It's really good. Yeah. This is also what's fun about doing a group thing, because we can all contribute and stuff like that. Yeah, Tim.
Another thing is, when I was studying this, you look into it, and it's the names of the tribes of Israel over his heart, if you read it properly. The breastplate or the ephod is over over the high priest's heart. And then you think about Yeshua talking to his disciples, where he says, I forget what he was saying, but he says, rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And I think about this as well. Is like, I almost wonder if Yeshua carries the names with him to the Father and intercedes with us. I don't know if it's some sort of more complex ephod with, like, a billion names on there. but it's or if it's just the nation of Israel and whips those names out every so often. But it's cool, because it really does get you to think differently, and just how much our Father cares about us.
Yeah, while you get the mic to the next person, I agree with that too. But it seems like on the top of the shoulder, there were those black stones I showed you. They had all the tribes. And then each tribe had their own stone here on the heart. Yeah. And those straps that went up and back, those joined them together. So the front of it was joined to the back. There we go. So they're a very key spot. Yeah. Yeah, Jill.
I thought it was kind of neat too. Melchizedek is his name. Well, the Tzedek part of his name means righteousness. And one of the titles of Yahweh is Yahweh Sidkenu, our righteousness. And Melchizedek means my king is righteousness, or my king is Zedek, which is righteousness.
Good point. Yeah, when you read that account in Genesis that I had up there, it's going to be real. You can read that and you go, what is up with that? It's an interesting short little story. Yeah.
Mike Wilmont says, and when the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies, he represents us to the Father, just as Yeshua represents us to the Father as well.
Mike, thank you all the way from Arkansas. Great comment. That's exactly it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a little takeaway on that with the stones, the tribes of Israel. It's really clear that those people that are in Yeshua, they are on his heart. It's a relational thing. And he says I believe it's in Revelation, many will say, and maybe it's someplace else, maybe Mark, I don't remember, but he says, many will say, Lord, Lord, and they give all these things, I did the car wash for you, and whatever. I even have your commemorative CD, whatever they say. And he says, get away from me, I know you not. It's a relational thing. So these stones, it's showing that he knows them, has a relationship with them. They are known to him because they're on his heart. And it's the same, takeaway or segue for us. Does he know us? Where are we in this picture? Do we have this relationship, or as we surmise about a lot of the people that go to churches, they merely warm that pew, they warm that seat. Where's the relationship? And if the relationship is there, then come into your rest, well done, you receive your reward. And if not, get away from me. And the other part that goes with that is a different parable with the wicked servant. They're thrown outside and there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. So pretty not so good picture. Relationship or not relationship. And you get to choose smoking or non-smoking for eternity. What do you want, right?
Yeah. So, smoking, not smoking section. That's a good way to put it. Thank you, kind sir. That was really good. I think I heard that one about 40 years ago. You're showing your age. Well, we're getting ready for the next speaker, too. Something that came to me as you look at, aren't these are just fantastically beautiful. These are all, when you look at, geology stuff and, the rock hounds, these are called what type of stones? Precious stones. And the tribes are precious to them. That's why they were put on those. They're precious stones. Yeah, Barbara.
Back up a little bit. The old saying, are you sitting on the pew or standing on the promises?
I love it. That is a great one. Are you sitting in the pew or standing on the promises? Very good. Anybody else? I'm going to slowly go forward here. It's neat, too, to see this because I always think, the temple, we're done. Oh, the tabernacle, we're done. Actually, it was, the tabernacle wasn't so much a huge complex, but the temple definitely was. It was a huge complex, not just the main building. You had all these other buildings where they had to do a lot of work, a lot of service and stuff. And this one's showing where they've got all those white linen garments that we've gone over a few times in Torah service. And then you have them coming in, and now they're going to go and they're going to get cleansed. They're going to do a mikvah. We would call it a baptism in English, but it's a mikveh, okay, and on purpose. So it's to cleanse you. And then you put on the garments so that you can serve. That's just amazing to me. They found that still in existence, and it hadn't disintegrated. What a beautiful crown. Okay, some discussion starting questions. Where is the cloud and pillar of fire in Exodus 40, 34 and 38, if someone can look those up, compared to Exodus 13, 21 and 22? Let me know when someone has one of those sections, and then we'll read them out loud. Can we read them? And then, if you want to read them too, that's fine. Pat, you got one? Okay. We're still not hearing, sorry.
Test 1, 2.
It works.
Exodus 13, verse 21
And 22. Yeah.
And Jehovah went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people.
Okay, so let's kind of walk this through and visualize this. Okay, you got, millions of people, because you got all the men, but also the children and stuff like that. They're all walking along. Okay, where would be the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud? It was out ahead of them where they could see it, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, Rick. You had some?
Okay,
I think you're on.
there he is. It's interesting too, because going from where they were at when Pharaoh told them to leave to the Sukkoth where they stopped, it was a day's journey, and it was night, and the cloud was not there, or the pillar of fire was not there. They walked by the moonlight, okay, to Sukkoth. And Sukkoth is an interesting place because it's the only place, Sukkoth meaning dwelling, okay? It's the only place where, it was a wadi, it was the only place where they could get stuff to build booths. And they stayed there, and they were taught the Passover there. The cloud met them as they went to leave. Okay, then they followed the cloud.
Then they followed it.
Interesting enough, they haven't been given anything yet. They haven't been given a tabernacle. They haven't been given the garments. They haven't been given anything. Okay, that's still future for them. And so they were following this cloud, and the cloud actually took them and protected them through the journey out of Egypt, because Sukkoth is still inside Egypt.
Yep, it still is inside of you. You're exactly right. Yep. So now, thinking we're all walking along, there's our signpost, there's our guide ahead of us. Now, who would like to read Exodus 40, 34 through 38? Miranda, have you got one? Tim, Jill's got it, sorry.
Okay. Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. And Moshe was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahweh was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys.
Yep. So it moved from being out there, not even there at the beginning, very good point, to out there. Remember, they used that pillar of fire, Lord did, to protect the Israelites, keep the Egyptians away before they went across the Red Sea. But now it's on the tabernacle itself. So it's moved to there. And I think that's an important distinction, that as we advance in our relationship with the Lord. That he's not out there, he's in here and indwelling with us and working with us. It's not a foreign thing that's way out there that all the other Near Eastern religions have very interesting concepts. It's very different from what's in the Bible. This one it's inside. I think this is showing us that relationship that was brought up earlier today. Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing too is when the glory did come on them, it also, the cloud and the pillar not only were there, but it was there because he made everything holy. In fact, the fire on the altar was lit by him, which made everything that was put on the altar holy and set apart. So his presence was physically living among them at that time.
Which is huge. That's huge. That also distinguishes him from, I have to say, almost all, if not all, the other ancient religions. They don't have that. They don't have that. Now, we may have already answered this one, but I like to put them in there just to make sure. Where is Yeshua in this parashah account? Can you see anything else in this parashah account where Yeshua could be than what we've already covered? Got really quiet in here. Yeah.
Okay, we could see Yeshua just in the glory that's there, okay? In fact, it's interesting because we could actually fast forward and look at what happened at Shavuot. The 50 days, what was it that set on them was the tongues of fire. What did that do? The same thing it did with them, and we became the dwelling place of Yahweh.
Yeah, David?
He's forcing me to ask this. I had a question. What is that a picture of?
Oh, that's cool. My wife knows. She was there when I took it out the car window. That's in Jordan. And that's the ruins of a Crusader castle. They have two main castles there in Jordan that I'm aware of. The most famous one that's still left over is actually in Syria. Syria or no, Lebanon. I think it's Lebanon. But it's up in there. I couldn't go in there. It was too hot and other things were going on. It was not safe to go up there. But this one is in Jordan. The yellow one, this is not a tourist attraction. We were on the road, took it out the window of the car. And then there's another one that is a tourist attraction that's bigger. But that's what that is, and that's what the countryside looks. This is the good part of Jordan, as far as, not the Arabian desert. This is the nice place. This is part of the edge of the Fertile Crescent, which is why the castle was there, because it was guarding the fertile valley. You have a transportation route, because we're on what's called the King's Highway. There were two highways going north-south through the Middle East. One was along the coast of Israel. That was the main one. But this one's inside. If you think of the Jordan Valley as like, a big scoop thing and the river goes down it, you have highlands up here, and that's where Jerusalem is, the mountains. On the other side, you have, on Jordan, same thing, little cities, but that's where the King's Highway is. And that they would use that as an alternate transportation route. This is right along that route.
In answer to your question, from Arkansas, Mike says, additionally, the Father in the pillar was their rear guard as they crossed on dry land, holding the enemy back, only to let the Egyptian army follow when they would be swallowed by the sea. Our song, He is my defense.
Amen to that. And then what other areas of this parashah account are relevant to us today? That would be a standard question we like to ask. Yes, Sue. And
There
then we
was
have some.
not two, there was three. One is down. Later on, many centuries later, they built another one on top.
Good point. Thank you, Sue. We don't hear from you very often in meetings, but when you do, it's always a zinger. It's right on. Thanks so much for sharing. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Something that is relevant today. So you look back there and you see the pillar of fire and the cloud, and all those kings around them, they all had spies who were watching. They were paying attention. Now, they weren't warmed by the fire, and they weren't cooled by the cloud, but the Israelites were. and they would go back and they would report to their kings and whoever, and tell them, and could you imagine what they would hear? See, so send new spies, because those ones are drunk or whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Yah has a way of making himself known everywhere. Everyone knows, everyone hears, it's in there, and the word says that even if you don't say something, the rocks will cry out. Okay?
Yeah.
All kinds of things. No other entity, these crazy wannabe deities, etc., has the ability to make themselves known worldwide. They're all little regional things, you know, and I think Peter or Paul talked about that, about the unknown God that's over all. Okay.
Yeah, Paul
so
was debating the Greeks.
relevant to us now is I talk to Muslims, I talk to people from all religions, but they all have heard something. They all know a little bit of something, some a little more than others, but relevant to us today is the whole world is like a warm market to share the gospel of Yeshua, because everybody's heard something. Everybody's seen
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
And when you start speaking the truth to them, it's that light that penetrates in. And we're not to be fearful. We're supposed to be bold and courageous. So share that gospel, speak it out, and don't be concerned with what they will say or do or whatever. But the Father's heart is that we go and make disciples. We share that word with them. And so that's what's relevant today is we see there was the light in the pillar that everybody could see. Okay, well, we don't have that working the same way today. We're supposed to be that. So
Word
be
of
bold
light,
and
yeah.
courageous. Go forth and share it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Do. Two things. One is when I can work them in, I'm going to try to give you, instead of a handout sheet, but a slide so you can go back and look at it on our YouTube channel. You can pause it, is information that could be helpful for you. That's why I had that with Yeshua the high priest and the Melchizedek. Remember to add chapter 8 to Hebrews. And so this is another one, and it was the crown of the high priest, holiness to Yahweh. And I just did a really quick search. This is a short list on holiness. And we say that in English. In Hebrew, it's kadosh, which means set apart. So you're not, remember, we're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world, set apart. So these scriptures are fascinating to read, all the different aspects of it. It's to encourage, one, give you some information, but two, this is not exhaustive. I just grabbed a bunch of them, and that seemed appropriate for a quick study. Hopefully this will prompt you to do more studying on your own, like the scriptures with Yeshua the high priest and Melchizedek. Okay, so that's what that's up there for. And then I have a little bit of housekeeping, then we're all done. And that is several people have requested and something for us to do, and leadership team contemplate it, and we all are going to try this. We're going to start 15 minutes earlier so that we can get a little bit more time in, because you guys are really good and our population is going up, and you're on a roll. I hate to cut it off, you know what I mean? Because it's so much fun. But we'll start a little bit earlier. So starting next Shabbat, March 12th, we'll start at 10:15 rather than 10:30. So if you want to show up for the prayer time, show up for 10 o'clock. And we just all gather up here in front as a group. We're all equal. And we all just pray for the whole day is what we like to do as a body. And then we'll start in at 10:15. Okay? Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And we'll see you in about 5 for our second service.